Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Kickstart Your Hyperautomation Journey with Integration. I'm Kunal Mehta, Director of Product Marketing at Jitterbit, and I'm joined today by Cheyenne Mandigarian, who's a sales engineer at Jitterbit. I would first like to start by thanking all of you for your time today. During the webinar today, what we'll do is we're going to talk a little bit about why integration is a crucial step on your hyperautomation journey. And then Cheyenne will take you through a brief demo of Jitterbit's iPaaS platform called Harmony. So that's the plan for today. Next slide, Cheyenne. Thank you. So this digitization is really something which is causing a lot of challenges for organizations. I'm sure what you're seeing here is nothing new for any of you. Let's start with the first one, the SaaS sprawl, right? The sudden spurt in the number of SaaS applications that organizations are seeing has really grown manyfold over the last few years. Add to this the already existing legacy or on-prem applications that you have, and managing all of this and making sure that there are no data silos is really challenging, right? So SaaS sprawl is obviously something which I'm sure, as I said, all of you are experiencing. What is this leading to is this is leading to IT teams which are struggling to keep up, right? So this sudden spurt in the number of applications means you don't have to just manage those applications, but also the integrations which you build on top of these applications, right? So how do you really manage both the applications and the integration requirements, which have, again, grown manyfold because of this, and the kind of, the sheer volume and complexity of both the integration projects are kind of, growing at a very high rate. And IT teams, as a result, are kind of, struggling to keep up with this increased demand. And then combine that with the fact that finding the right talent is still a challenge, right? So there is a shortage of skilled labor, especially with the right talent. In fact, I think there was a recent talent transformation global impact report which said that there is a glaring gap in job-ready digital talent, which is causing organizations to basically stall or slow down their digital transformation efforts. So all of this is basically taking its toll on your digital transformation journey. Next slide. And these are just some of the data points which support kind of, what I was covering on the previous slide, right? So with respect to SaaS sprawl, again, I'm sure all of you are seeing and managing kind of, tens, probably few hundreds of applications within your organization. And because of this growth in SaaS applications, it is no longer just IT, which is buying or which is in charge of these applications. A lot of these applications are kind of, even not just the buying decision, but then after that, managing and building integrations and all of that is now being done by line of business kind of professionals, right? So it's as I said, it's not just IT's responsibility, but when line of business is basically building some of these applications for their own departmental usage, what you still have to ensure is that they are still following some of the corporate governance and the security standards that IT is kind of recommending for the organization, right? Because nobody wants to really risk kind of anything to do with security and how it might kind of cause, an unintended effect on your network. And obviously, not having the right talent obviously has a top line impact on how fast can you actually do your digital transformation initiatives, and as a result, the business growth that you might see. So all of these challenges is what is really driving the hyperautomation adoption within organizations. Now, hyperautomation actually has a lot of information, right? So let me spend a little bit of time talking about that. As I said, there are, analysts have their definition of what is hyperautomation. Some of the vendors have their own definition on hyperautomation. But we at Jitterbit, how we kind of define it is that hyperautomation is really a disciplined approach that organizations take to identify, vet, and then automate as many business and IT processes as you can. So in its simplest word, that's what really hyperautomation is, right? And typically, again, if you read up on hyperautomation, it's not one technology, right? So it's a combination of technologies. There is integration or integration platform at its core. There is business process management systems. There is AI and ML. There's obviously RPA, or the robotic process automation, combined with some of the low code and no code tools. So it's really, as I said, a bunch of technologies coming together, which you then use depending on where you are in your journey to hyperautomate for your organization, right? So I think it's really a strategic approach rather than a specific technology, right? So it's not just one or two or three technologies, but it's really your approach towards how do you want to start or continue your hyperautomation journey depending on what stage you are today. That's really the decision around how you roll out some of your hyperautomation initiatives. Next slide. Now, integration is really at its core, right? So I'm sure for a lot of you, your existing IT infrastructure, I'm sure looks something like this. You have a bunch of SaaS applications combined with your already existing on-prem or legacy systems. You obviously have some of these applications for internal use, but then you're also using some sort of a B2B application to connect with your suppliers, partners, other vendors. Now, what might happen is, if some of these are not well integrated, it could really lead to data silos, right? And that might mean that you will not have a single source of truth regarding your data, right? So that's very, very important. Even if you've integrated, the question to really ask is, how do you really go about these integrations, right? Do you still custom code some of these point-to-point integrations? Because the problem with that is that, one, it obviously lacks scalability because you then have to kind of repeat this task every time. And then your IT team might end up spending too much time on some of these manual repetitive tasks of building kind of, point-to-point integrations. So I think you really need to kind of look at an integration platform which acts as this, a single one-point solution to really combine all of your existing data and applications and really help you automate some of your business workflows, right? Because I think end of the day, integration might be a technology and might help you kind of connect system A to system B. But what you're really trying to do is you're really trying to, for example, automate some of your workflows, right? So how do you really automate, for example, let's say your opportunity to order business process, right? So it's really, how do you use integration in some of these use cases or business processes? That's really what kind of, the key advantage of using an integration platform as a service is. And that's how kind of, the platforms are really, really useful. Next slide. All right, so Jitterbit's Harmony is a low-code integration platform that connects systems, automates workflows, and creates new applications to streamline your business processes across the enterprise. And you can do all of this in a single platform, right? So what we really help you do is we help you integrate your data and applications efficiently. Once you've built those, you can manage and scale those integrations and applications easily through our platform. And you can also build or rather create business applications quickly, right? So I think what happens again, I think the earlier example where I talked about how some of the line of business professionals might be building their own applications, right? So we have a capability, and Shine will obviously, kind of take you through that in a while. But how do you really look at some of the micro flows within your enterprise and try to automate those, with an app, right? So it's not really some of the larger business workflows, because obviously you have, let's say, a CRM system or an ERP system or an e-commerce system, and some of those larger flows can very easily be automated with some of these off-the-shelf systems. But there is this long tail of micro workflows that you might still be involved in doing a lot of manual tasks. And how do you actually build an application which can kind of reduce, repetition or manual work with respect to some of those micro workflows? So that's what really Harmony helps you do. So with that brief introduction, let me now hand it over to Shan, who will take you through some of the capabilities of our platform. Shan, over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kunal. I will stop sharing the slideshow here and we can switch over to the Harmony platform. And I'll do a quick intro of what you're seeing here. So this is the landing screen of the Harmony platform. And like Kunal said, everything we just talked about in those slides, we can see how the Harmony platform helps you achieve that. First of all, you can see here, I'm on the Harmony landing page. I'm just accessing this through Chrome because Harmony is a cloud hosted system. So there's no need to download something locally. You can just access it right through your browser. Once you're here, you're greeted with these main app tiles here. Now, we're going to spend the bulk of today in Cloud Studio right here, and we'll finish off with App Builder. Now, Cloud Studio is the portion of the platform where you actually design your workflows between your systems. So for today, I'll show you a few workflows between a CRM and ERP system. But like Kunal was saying, you're not limited to just one or two systems. You can have all of your different applications, whether they're on-prem, cloud. You can integrate all of them together. It's very much an open sandbox platform, as you'll see. We also have API Manager here. This is where you can go to actually create Jitterbit APIs that you associate with flows you design in Cloud Studio. And the idea behind that is, maybe you want to take advantage of webhooks for real-time integrations, or maybe you want to build, a web page with a submit button that points to a Jitterbit workflow, so you can have customers sign up and push their data to your systems. Whatever you would do with an API, that's what API Manager is for. App Builder, we'll get to this one kind of towards the end of today, but as the name implies, that's where you go to actually create an application, and it's a low to no code builder here. So you're not going to need 10 years of Java experience just to build an application. We have the marketplace here. This essentially ties directly into Cloud Studio, right? So in Cloud Studio, that's where you have the ability to connect your applications with our connector library, and you have access to our transformation engine and things like that. But the marketplace is essentially on top of that, where you can actually download pre-built workflows that are built by our team. And this can really help you speed up your ROI, because essentially what our team did for the marketplace, it says, what are the most common use cases between the systems that our customers are using? And we said, hey, if people keep building an opportunity to order flow with Salesforce and NetSuite, let's just take that and kind of skeletonize it and put it on the marketplace. So even if there are a few customizations that you might want to add on top of that, right? You want to map your custom fields, you want to add some more rules to it. At least you're not having to build the entire thing, right? You're 50 to 80% of the way done before you even get started, really. And then you also have the management console. So these are the main tiles here. Management console is where you go to essentially monitor the health of your integrations. This is where you can view all of your logs in kind of a centralized hub. You can manage your users. You can give them their own role-based permissions. You can set up your security policies. Let's say you're using a single sign-on provider, you can utilize that. So management console is where you'll be spending kind of more of your time post go live. Now, also, we'll dive into Cloud Studio here in just a sec, but I always like to point out that beyond these main app tiles here on the landing page, if you scroll down, There's a whole bunch of helpful links here. So you're not going to have to try to remember everything I say today, right? Because you can always come down here and there's, for example, getting started links to each of those app tiles. So maybe you want to know more about API Manager. Here's a great place to start. Or maybe you want more just kind of high level information. We also have a link to our documentation site called Success Central. This is where you can find any technical information, right? So maybe you want to know something like how a certain connector that we have works, like our Salesforce connector, what credentials are needed to use our Salesforce connector. Or maybe you want to know kind of more high level, right? How is our architecture built and what security certifications do we have? That's the sort of thing you can find there. And the URL is success.jitterbit.com. You could go there right now if you'd like. But here's just a nice link for you. Now that one, like I said, you could go there right now. But we also will unlock, you'll unlock the Jitterbit community and Jitterbit University. Jitterbit community is a forum where you can ask questions and Jitterbit employees come in and answer them. So yeah, pretty self-explanatory. If you have like something you're wondering about, what does this button do, or what does this message mean, pop that in the community. I'm sure someone's asked that before and you can see what help they got. Last but not least, though, Jitterbit University, can't recommend this enough. Same training that I go through and every other Jitterbit employee goes through. You have access to that same exact training, and it's actually a interactive course. It's not just a bunch of videos you're going to be watching, right? It's like you'll actually build workflows along with the training, and there's training for every aspect of the platform. So there's the Cloud Studio training, there's API Manager training, there's our new App Builder courses. With our App Builder course, you can actually build along with it. It'll have you create an application that you could use for inventory management in your supply closet, something like that, where it's all your different users can see who is renting certain parts of your inventory, something like that, for example, something you could build. All right, so all that said, I have a few flows to show you in Cloud Studio. You can kind of get a feel for the sort of flows that you could build in action. All right, so I'm going to switch tabs here over to a Cloud Studio project that I have open. And like I said, this is going to be an example of sort of an opportunity to order flow with my CRM and ERP. In this case, I'm using Salesforce and NetSuite. And I figure we'll start off simple in terms of what the flow is doing. And as we go, we'll see a few different flows and they'll get kind of increasingly complex as we go. So this first one is pretty simple. And honestly, you could probably tell exactly what's going to happen before I run anything just because of how the UI is built and the simplicity of this flow in particular. So as you can see, this is going to be a customer sync between NetSuite and Salesforce, and we're going to use NetSuite as kind of the source of truth here. The idea is maybe this is like a new implementation of Salesforce, but we already had an existing NetSuite instance, and we want to do sort of a historical migration before we get started, kind of keeping up to date from there. So just so you can see, here's my Salesforce accounts table, and if I give that a refresh for you, see there's currently nothing in there, but I have hundreds and hundreds of customers in my NetSuite instance. So without Jitterbit, I could do a whole bunch of manual copy and pasting, but that's very error prone and takes a long time. So instead, I can just build this really simple flow like this and just run it on demand whenever I want, or I can set up automation on there as well. For the sake of the demo, I'll just run it on demand like I did there. Now, even though, while this is running, I'll explain a few things. So even though the data here is very simple, I just want to grab everything out of NetSuite and push it all into Salesforce. Not a lot of, custom validation rules there, anything like that. We're still seeing a little bit of best practices here. So just so you kind of understand what you're seeing here, I've separated this workflow into two boxes. These are called operations. And what I've done here is the way I've built it is I have one operation that's solely responsible for my NetSuite search. And then storing that in a temporary storage that's then deleted once the flow is done running. But before that, it goes to step 2, which is to read from where I just wrote my NetSuite information and push that into Salesforce. Now, I didn't necessarily have to build it that way. I could have just done one operation box that does both things. But when you build it like this, it's actually, I think it makes it a little more readable, first of all. But second of all, it also makes it more modular, which makes it easier to scale. So let's say I wanted to push to a different target, right? I want to push to Salesforce and I don't know, a database. I could still just stick with one read out of NetSuite, and then I can push it out to as many targets as I want. I don't have to do a read for each individual target, which makes it more efficient, both in terms of how long it takes to run, And if you have, maybe your systems give you a certain amount of API calls you're allowed to make, right? You're not needing to make multiple API calls to feed to multiple targets. Now I can see both steps say success. So now I should be able to hop back to what I just showed you earlier, which was blank before this. Give it a refresh. Now we have hundreds of records here. Now, so that's, again, this is a pretty simple flow, admittedly, but this is a sort of thing where you could build this in one sitting, right? It's if you know your systems, right? Okay, I have my NetSuite, I have my customers in NetSuite, and I have my accounts in Salesforce. That's really all I need to know to build something like this, and then what fields you want to map. But let's go on to my next flow, and we'll kind of, like I said, get slightly more complex as we go. So the idea, like I said, right, is we want to be able to take an opportunity from Salesforce and turn that into a sales order in NetSuite. So to do that, now that we have our customers, we're going to need something for them to buy. So let's do a product sync, which is my next flow right here. And as you can see, this one's getting a little more complex just in terms of the actual data itself. And we're also seeing another Jitterbit feature here. So first of all, we now see some red arrows coming off of each of these operation boxes. And essentially what these are, the green arrows represent on success, we want to move to the next step, right? And the red arrows represent what if something goes wrong. At the end of the day, we always know that something might go wrong when you run a flow, right? Maybe your password expired, or maybe, in one of your systems you entered in some, you entered a null entry and, your target system doesn't want you to insert null values, so it rejects it. It's a permissions error, it's a data error, whatever it may be. Jitterbit detects those errors, and the default behavior from there is to, try again, just in case it was kind of just a glitch in the system. If we just tried again, it would have worked. We do that for you, and then we'll take whatever the system, whatever the error message was from that system, we put in the log. Now, that's all well and good if you're in the debugging process, but once you kind of gone live, if you had to just keep checking your logs all the time for those errors, that would get kind of tedious. So the idea is you can use these red arrows to set up error, your own custom error logic. And that could be something like I've done here, where all it's doing is it's going to send me an email message containing that error body. Or it could be something more like a custom retry loop or a custom cleanup script, whatever you want to run. You can do that with these red arrows. But anyway, as I'm talking here, let's just run this one again. And again, just running this one on demand for the sake of the demo, you can absolutely set these to run automatically so that you're not having to manually go in here and click run. We want you to be able to set and forget as much as possible. Another thing to point out, though, is that the data itself is a little bit more complex here just because of the way that NetSuite and Salesforce handle this data, at least in my kind of just standard developer versions that I have set up here. Because in NetSuite, we have the product information and its price information all together in one object. But in Salesforce, I have a product entry and a price book entry. So I have to do one read to get all of that information out of NetSuite, kind of just like before. But now I'm having to, grab what's the standard price book ID I'm going to be using. I need to insert the product information and the price book information as two separate and inserts into Salesforce. So I've broken those up into individual operations, and I've chained them together with these green arrows, which means upon success, we're going to move to the next step. If something goes wrong with one of those entries, right, I'm not going to want to sync in the price book information if I don't have the actual product. So if 10 entries are coming through, one of them has the error, that one will go down the error path. But if the other 9 are fine, they continue down kind of the chain here. And as you can see, as I was talking, we see each step labeled as success. So let's hop back into my Salesforce, and here's my my accounts. I switch over to products now. I have all of these here, and you can see I give them just a product code of NetSuite, so I know where they came from. And I'll grab a product here so we can see super basic data just to keep it simple for the webinar here. But we have product name, codes, and we also have a price book entry. So now we have kind of that prerequisite data. We can start setting up that actual opportunity. But I figured before I do that, I also want to show you that there is, I kind of mentioned at the very beginning, there is the ability for you to have real-time integrations where you allow the systems to use their webhook capabilities to send information into Jitterbit. So you're not having to run something and do a query into that system. You just let the system itself detect when, okay, here's some new information, send it to Jitterbit. So for that, I'm actually, instead of using one of these accounts we just synced over, I'm going to add a new account into Salesforce here. And you can see here, I already have my new account page pulled up, and I just wanted this very basic information. So we gave this account a name, phone number, and an address. I mean, that's kind of the bare minimum you need for someone, right? You need to know where to ship their stuff to. So we'll save that as a new account here. Now, me clicking save has actually triggered something in Salesforce. Salesforce calls it the outbound message, but a lot of systems have it and they have different names for it. But essentially, it's a webhook where Salesforce has detected that a new account's been added. So it's taken this payload of data that I've entered in, it's sent it into Jitterbit, and I can actually show you it's running this flow right here. Behind the scenes, this one was kicked off automatically. So it's created a customer in NetSuite, and it's actually a bi-directional flow in this case. So once it created that customer in NetSuite, it's going to write back to what I just created in Salesforce. So if I just refresh my page here in Salesforce, without me having to run anything or wait for a scheduled flow to run, it's done the bi-directional sync, and I can tell that it's done that because I have a custom field here called NetSuite account ID. And that was filled out with the ID from NetSuite, as the name implies. And I can show you that if I just copy this name, I'll copy that and I'll come into NetSuite, paste in the search bar of my NetSuite here. And it pulls that right up as a customer, and it should have just, I think, as a phone number and an address, but we'll see that in common here. There we go. We got that same phone number, same address, same name. So now I can confirm this customer is in both systems, and I already know that my products are synced up between the two. So let's finally go ahead and add the opportunity I've been promising. So again, I'm just going to do a little bit of work here in Salesforce. Pretend I'm a sales rep here, and I'm just going through my tasks here. Now, obviously, I'm going to keep it very simple for the sake of the demo here, but all we need for Salesforce to accept this is a name, a close date. Let's say it's today. And we just started, so we're prospecting this. All right, that's all we need for it, so I'll save. Now I click save, but that's not gonna fire it off yet because that'd be kind of useless if we just kept putting every empty op through. So nothing's happened yet, just again, me working here in Salesforce. Now let's add some products to this, make it worth some money. And again, these are the products that you just saw me run the sync for earlier. I'm just grabbing a few of these here. And of course, meet their quantities, so I don't know, let's just do 3, 2, 1. We'll save that. Okay, looks good. Now, if I was going to try to make an opportunity like this, I would probably get reamed out for my VP for not having more information. But hey, we have the bare bones, right? We have a customer, we have some products, it's worth some money. At the end of the day, that's all you really need, right? So at this point, let's say we're done and we want to create a sales order in our ERP based on this. To send this off into Jitterbit, I'm going to set it to closed won. And I always like to do this here because we get to see the little animation go. I always like to see that. So again, I have another outbound message. So this is another example of a real-time flow. This is taking this payload of data we just entered. Once it's set to close one, sends it into Jitterbit, and Jitterbit will again sync it over, and I'll show you what this flow looks like. You can see here I have just multiple workflows as part of my project here. So this is kind of my opportunity to order project with my multiple workflows. And this one is kind of the most robust one of them all. You can see here as I scroll, there's multiple steps involved. And again, that's just because there's the opportunity itself. There's different line items here. So we need to make sure that each of those is synced up. And then at the end, it's also bi-directional because we don't want to just kind of blindly push data across. We want each system to stay in sync. So as we create the sales order in NetSuite, kind of like before with my account that we had in real time, all I need to do is now just refresh my page here. And after that ran kind of behind the scenes, I get that right back from NetSuite, where again, I have another custom field here in Salesforce called NetSuite sales order. And again, I got that ID right here. So if I just copy this ID, come back into NetSuite here, I'll paste that in the search bar again, just to show you that did in fact create a sales order. You can already see that preview there. It shows me that webinar account customer we added. So now we have the sales order here, same kind of value calculated, same customers linked right there. If I scroll down a bit, same products, same quantities. So everything entered in Salesforce is in the right spots here in NetSuite. And the idea is that, even though I was kind of walking through it for the purposes of a demo, the idea is that you're, people can work in their applications rather than needing to worry about the syncing that needs to happen. They can just work in Salesforce, work in NetSuite, and kind of behind the scenes, you can almost forget about the fact that Jitterbit's actually doing it all for you, because you've designed them to, you designed all of your logic in there, all your field mappings, custom fields, automation, so that it's doing everything it needs to do without as much manual intervention needed. And now I can go through the fulfillment process and ship this out. But at this point, Jitterbit's done its job. We got the data where it needed to go, and we can kind of work in our ERP from now on. So that was kind of a little quick preview of the sort of things that Cloud Studio can do. I want to briefly talk about the marketplace too, because actually this workflow that I've showed you here, this customer sync, the product sync, the opportunity sync, this is essentially kind of a demoified version, if you will, of something that you can just get right off the marketplace. And I was kind of referring to the fact that, the flows were getting more and more complex as we went. And that was not to say that you're going to need to spend a lot of time building here. In fact, I wanted to kind of use that as a segue to show you the marketplace. As I said at the very beginning, this is where you can go to get pre-built workflows to use in Cloud Studio. So now that I'm here in the marketplace, you see we have over 400 different assets here, and they range from our recipes, which are sort of kind of point to point. One object in one system goes to one object in another, kind of a simple recipe, all the way to templates, which are more like entire business processes, all kind of self-contained together. So for example, I can use our endpoint filter here, and I'll filter down to Salesforce and NetSuite like I was just using. You can see here we have 4 recipes and 2 templates built specifically with Salesforce and NetSuite in mind. And the one that I was just showing you is essentially an abridged version of this one right here, the Salesforce NetSuite opportunity to order template. And you can see right here, it even comes with documentation. So any prereqs you may need, right? Maybe there's some custom fields you might want to enter, things like that. What versions of these systems you need to have at a minimum. It'll tell you everything you need to know before you get started. But essentially, like I said, if I scroll here, you can see it'll do the contacts, it'll do the accounts, inventory items, and the opportunities themselves. All you need to do is click Start Project, and it'll download all of that into your Cloud Studio. Once you do that, it'll look something like this. So this is what the account sync from NetSuite into Salesforce would look like. And you can see here there's actually multiple different versions, right? If you wanted to, maybe you wanted to use accounts, maybe you wanted to use contacts. There's different versions of them there. So if your use case is slightly different, we've kind of already thought of that for you. But essentially, there's also a lot of bells and whistles here too. They do things like create a summary email based on what just happened and send that to you every time it runs. There's the error handling built in. There's actually something called a delta sync too, where every time it runs, it's going to take the timestamp. So today, if I ran it right now, the 9:33 timestamp, save that so that the next time it runs, if you have 1 million contacts in your system and you just need the latest 10 that have been added since the last run, it's not going to grab all 1 million. It's going to use that timestamp from the last run. So there's a lot of kind of bells and whistles that our team has built in, but at the end of the day, it's built on top of Cloud Studio. So you can still come in here and you can map additional fields you may have added. You can add additional targets. You can add additional sources. It's meant to be customizable. You're not kind of stuck with whatever we give you, if that makes sense. So you still have access to the connector library, for example. So yeah, I just wanted you to know that despite the fact that some of this may have looked complicated, essentially all I did is took it from the marketplace and kind of just made it my own, because that's what we expect you to do as well, make them your own. Now that said, that's kind of the things you can do in Harmony, and we're staying kind of high level for the sake of the webinar today. But in Cloud Studio, that's also where you do any logic that you need as part of your flow. So for example, maybe you want to do some translations. Maybe you want to do some calculations. We want you to be able to have your data the way you want it before it reaches your target. But just from a high level, it's the kind of the back end piping of your data, if you will. Now, kind of in contrast with that, the app builder is more of a way for you to build something that's actually interactable, has a front end to it, right? So let me click into the app builder, and we'll do kind of a quick overview of that. We're actually going to have another webinar tomorrow with one of my colleagues who's showing you how he built a very complex app builder project where he actually built our entire benefits sign up process as a Jitterbit app, and our entire company used that to sign up for our benefits. So you can actually build pretty complex workflows in App Builder if you want. But we'll stick with kind of a simple example today. So I'm going to click into, actually, I'll show you this tab here. If you just click right into it from the landing page, it'll bring you to all your different apps you may have. And I'll drill down into one I already have open here in a different tab. This is just kind of something I built myself, I just called it tests. I wanted to kind of play around with it, see what's possible using the app builder. So just like Cloud Studio, the idea is that this is a low code builder. So you can build your integrations with no code, and you can build actual applications with no code needed. It's all very UI driven. And I'll kind of give you a little sneak peek onto how you build the app. But essentially, once you design the kind of the data structure of the app, the front end is already done for you. It's web friendly, it's mobile friendly. Obviously, you can go in and add some customizations, right? Choose the colors, add your own logos and things like that. But you don't need to be a full stack developer to actually create an app. So I'll show you what this one looks like. Essentially, it's a kind of a bare bones application where I kind of abridged the same process we saw earlier, where we want to create a customer and give them an order that they've placed. And I've done that as just one kind of pane in my app here. So if I'll show you what this looks like in my app, it gives you a little pop-up. It says, welcome to the tests module. It'll have some interaction here. Maybe you need to agree to terms and conditions the first time you're accessing it. So yeah, let's agree to it. And then it'll give me a pop-up here with just what information I need to see. Maybe in the back, I have some kind of metadata fields that I'm keeping track of, but for a user, they don't need to see that, right? They just want to see a form where they enter in their information. So just like we did before, let's enter in kind of a fake customer here. I'll give him some test information here. Test street, Anytown, CA, California, just because I live there. And you can see there's different kind of data types here, right? We have drop downs, we have strings, we have digits. So let's submit that for the customer. It thanks me for that. You're welcome. Now we have a customer. Let's give them an order that they're placing. Obviously, very simplified version here, but just for the sake of simplicity here, maybe it costs $150 per thing they're buying, and they're buying 5 of them. So we can actually do calculations as part of the app too, which is what I'm showing you there. And now it's created the order, so it kind of gives me that confirmation, and it shows me here I have my same customer information, and I have that little that order they placed. So it calculated their total cost there based on the price and the quantity. So very basic example of something where maybe you don't want to have someone go through the Salesforce UI. Maybe you just want to give them a simplified version here. And the way you build it, like I was just showing you here, is behind the scenes, there's something called a domain model. So I built a domain model just based on kind of an abridged version of a customer entry and a sales order. So you see here, it's very UI driven, right? Maybe you want to add a text box. You just drag that from the right-hand side. Maybe you want to create a drop-down. You can define your own drop-downs. But something it also does is lookups. Lookups are something that are usually very hard to kind of custom code. And that's something that's just baked into App Builder. So if you have different modules at play and you want to link them together, you can do that very easily. You can do your calculations as well. So here I have a currency. I have the number for the quantity, and the total will be, a calculation there. So I won't get too in depth here because I don't want to steal my colleague's steam tomorrow when he kind of does a much more in-depth version of an app builder, demo here. But this is the sort of thing where if you know what data you have, let's say maybe it's a spreadsheet that you're using, right? It gets the job done. It has the data you need, but it's not very user-friendly. This is the sort of thing where you could instead build an app, and it's a lot easier to use. It still has all the data capabilities, right? It's not like there's less capability than a spreadsheet, but it's also easier to use. And it's part of the Harmony platform. So all of your integrations and your apps are kind of all in one central place, where then you can keep an eye on them, right? If I go back to the management console, that's all kind of centralized and easily managed. So that about does it for today. Obviously, we kept it high level, but stay tuned and we can do deeper dives into what sort of capabilities are there in Cloud Studio in terms of, you know, transformation logic and ETL logic. And of course, tomorrow my colleague Cam will do a deep dive in App Builder. So if that sounded interesting just from my little intro of it there, you know, come back tomorrow and you can see a lot more in depth on the sort of capabilities there.